Hi, this is Kevin Sabrin, your host of the Channel Chatter podcast, and I'd like to welcome you to the program. Today's guest, he's one of us. He's a channel pro on the marketing side of the equation, and he's with an up-and-coming brand a lot of people are watching. He spent 2 decades on the agency side of the business, managing everything from PR to full-blown media campaigns before making the leap to the client side, where he's currently the director of marketing for Magni America. If you don't know Magni, you should probably check them out. They're bringing new technology, models, and designs to the Telehandler and all-terrain lift space. Their unique combination of rotation, heavy lift, and safety, along with European design stylings, are really turning heads. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Roskie. Matt Roskie, welcome to the program. How you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Thanks for being a part of the Channel Chatter podcast. You're going to be one of the early folks to hit the playing field here. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, awesome. Well, as I mentioned prior to the recording, Channel Chatter is a podcast meant for the channel pros, the marketing, the sales, the dealer development specialists, the people in the trenches actually getting the work done. And you have a channel, you have a fairly unique channel story that I'd love for you to tell. Like, what defines your network of dealers, of sales, of rental, those folks that are actually getting the job done on the front lines? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, please?
Sure. Well, I started back many years ago. I hate to say it, but it was the late '90s, back when there was dial-up internet. I came out of college with a double major in business, marketing, and communications, and went right into the ad agency business and worked with the ad agencies up until just about a year and a half ago. So about 24 years on that side of the fence, and went over to the other side, on the client side, that we call it, to a manufacturer. In the agency world, I worked for large agencies, small agencies, wore a lot of hats, everything from mostly account management, but then also doing the work. And in small agencies, you got to do you got to write SOPs. You got to do a lot of different things that normally people don't think about when they're leaving college. It's like there's no standard operating procedure for how we're delivering this work or how we're doing this, or there's a better way. So not just doing all the marketing work, but also back of the house work and including budgeting and everything else. So, long story short, went over to the client side, joined Magni America in 2023 in January. My first day was actually World of Concrete. That show out in Vegas every year that we exhibit at. Good thing was, yeah, it wasn't my first time at the show, so I was very familiar with it. Being within the construction industry for a number of years, it was very familiar to me, and that's one of the reasons why I left the agency business. There was an opportunity to grow on the other side and just keep evolving. So it just happened. It was in a niche that I'm familiar with, very fond of, and now we're here. And Magni itself is fairly new. It was created by Riccardo Magni, who still runs the company. They're based out of Italy. They're a global company. He founded the company in 2013. He had a long history of manufacturing and designing lifts, forklifts, telehandlers, so to speak, cranes, and started Magni in 2013. So they just hit their 10-year anniversary last year. And they're a global company. So the growth has been tremendous for them. The technology they're putting in the equipment is, top notch. And it's proof in the pudding. They have distributors around the world, and we're lucky enough to be one of them in the U.S. So Magni America handles just the U.S., the 50 states, and we have about 50 or so dealers right now in the country that are renting and selling it.
You're not North America. You're not Canada, U.S. only?
No, Magni right now, they have a couple dealers up in Canada that handle that market.
They just work with them out of Italy, basically.
Yes. Yep.
I'll never forget when you guys hit the stage. It was a big splash. I mean, first of all, you've got some amazing collateral. I love the social posts. I love the 360 information. I love the use cases when I see the handlers in motion and picking up great, amazing things and swinging them over ditches and on top of bridges and things like that. It's real eye-catching. But I also remember it in the booth. I mean, the color scheme, you've got a wonderful presence.
Yeah, it comes from the European look and feel. It's very European, and that's something that they want to, push through all their branches. And like any great company, they want, it's their brand. That's who they are and what they do. The red color is a Ferrari red. They're based out of the Motor Valley, so to speak. So you got Lamborghini, Ferrari, Ducati, like, you know, that whole thing. It's like, what they say, if you're in it's basically the proximity, right? They're in that Motor Valley, so they kind of all rub elbows together, and it just, came to life.
I'm sure you can't put a product out and not have fit and feel and finish be a big part of the
Exactly.
nation, right?
Yeah.
Well, hence the splash. So I remember it. I don't remember the year specifically, but man, I've been to, like, I feel like all the world of concretes, and that's a baptism by fire, man.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know the space, but to jump in on your first day and start out with something like that's like Carnival meets Super Bowl meets I don't know what.
Yeah. I'm used to being in the ad agency business for so long. You're used to drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like the next evolution of it, I guess.
So you talk about like small ad agency and wearing a lot of hats and so
Yep.
forth. That probably hasn't changed a whole lot for you now, being a U.S. entity. You probably wear hats there too.
Yeah, it's you go from large or small agencies. You're still doing a bunch of work. It just depends on how many team members you have, right?
Yeah.
So being a small company, or we're essentially still getting our footing really in the US. I mean, we do have a great dealer network, but there's so much opportunity and we're still growing. It's, sky's the limit. So, in our marketing department, we have a whole team of 2 people right now, myself being one of them. And we do leverage, our team in Italy, our counterparts over there that are working with us, and we're sharing content and all that, which is nice to have. But yeah, it's going back to the smaller agencies where you got to bootstrap a lot of stuff. You got to figure it out. You got to do a lot of it yourself, because you have a budget, but you need to figure out what you can really outsource and get the best bang for your buck for, and then what you can handle inside to still maintain the brand and do good work.
The big part of what this program is about is sharing the ideas and thoughts on the tips and tricks and tools and best practices that get the job done. Because there's one thing that's consistent among all brands right now. We're all hearing that story: do more with less. So
Yeah.
you got a whopping team of 2, and it's wonderful that you can leverage your global teammates. But at the end of the day, where the rubber hits the road in the U.S., it's you and your teammate here, right? So
Yep.
we're going to definitely talk about that. And I want to pick your brain about tips and tricks and tools and things of that nature. But before we get too far away from introductions, let's talk a little bit about what is the product type for those of the listeners that might not understand what this segment is. And then let's talk then after about what the dealers might look like. Okay.
Sure. So Magni offers 3 different models: the rotators, which they entered the market with, and really they started the company with, which is still a very unique product. It's not a commodity telehandler. It rotates like an excavator or crane, but technically it's a telescopic forklift. That's what it's classified as. We also have fixed boom telehandlers that you've seen for hundreds of years you've seen many brands out there, JLG, Genie, they've all had them for 100 years. So we have a model lineup of those. And also heavy lifts, which again, they're fixed boom telehandlers, but they're going from 22,000 pounds up to 110,000 pounds in terms of capacity. These guys are lifting massive objects, very heavy objects, and can maneuver them around very easily. Those are the 3 model lines. Now, our dealers, when we came in, we were just offering the rotators. So that was our entry point into the market. So it was not a commodity product. It's still a concept to some people. And that's where we kind of entered the market with. And then right now we've just started, kind of backfilling, so to speak, with the other product lines. The heavy lifts started kind of trickling in. We started seeing some opportunities with those. And then the fixed boom telehandlers, which they just kind of upgraded last year with a new lineup. Mm-hmm. Those were coming in now too. So now we have all 3. And we're definitely seeing a lot of opportunity with the heavy lifts right now with different applications in different industries.
So who represents these for you? Like, what does your channel look like?
So we have
product type.
Not really. Most of the dealers, the dealer makeup for us is both. You have your retail/rental dealers, right? They're going to sell, they're going to rent. And then we have, rental houses. You could classify them as those are our dealers. And in our world, we have stocking dealers and rental dealers. So stocking dealers have, protected territories and such, and then rental dealers can rent equipment. So there's a whole bunch of details around that. But But our dealer network is a range of dealers. We're part of the Caterpillar Allied program, so we do have access to Caterpillar dealers in their cat rent stores. I think we have about 15 right now, cat dealers within our network.
Awesome.
We also have some crane dealers, that have a crane lineup, and they saw Magni as a nice opportunity to fit a niche. So they're familiar with some of the technology that's in our systems already. And then we have some independents, that have a fleet of equipment, aerial equipment, scissor lifts, boom lifts, and they saw this as, hey, this can actually attract some more customers, maybe open up a new customer base for us, and get some long-term rentals with some of the rotators and other equipment.
So conventional wisdom around rental seems to be that rental is a paid trial. You put it in a rental store, people rent it the one time, they fall in love with the asset, the machine. Eventually, after a couple rentals, it financially makes sense, and then they go ahead and buy it, right? Is that more true or more important when you're dealing with something like an articulated, rotating, all-terrain lift? Or
Right now, we're seeing the rotators is a very big rental item. Our dealers do retail them, but I would say they're not retailing them at a rate like they would maybe a mini excavator line or something like that. They're more of a rental item. So they're going to rent it for, it could be a month, it could be 6 months. Contractor finishes the job, send it back. Maybe they get more work. They'll rent it again for another month, send it back, So we're not seeing the retail side of the rotators, as the main driver. They're more of like a great rental item for a rental house or a dealer to put in use and get their ROI back quickly. And then maybe they want to flip it and get another one, so.
Is that because the 360 rotation would that be considered more novel or new in the industry here in the US? Or is that why it's more prone to rental?
It's hard to say. I want to say that's probably a small piece of it. I think the other piece is, why would a contractor want to buy a piece of equipment that's a couple $100,000, depending on what model it is, when they're not sure of the work that's coming down the pipeline that they would actually need it for? Because we have a different lineup for the rotators. They go up to 167 feet. So there's a lot of different opportunities. So their jobs might change. They might need something that's actually has a longer stick, maybe something that has a shorter stick,
Yeah.
So it's not a one size fits all, but yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why it's a great rental opportunity.
What opportunities and challenges does that present for you, given that channel choice?
So, two challenges. One is the rotators is still a concept to most, especially the contractors who have seen them, maybe not have seen them. And this is throughout my career, we've seen this, and it's just human behavior. I've always done it this way. Why would I need something else?
Yeah.
Why would I need to rotate my telehandler when I have my fixed boom I can, use? Why would I want to spend that money on a rental when I already have this, So you have to overcome those objections like any good salesperson. You have the massive benefits of the rotators. It's educating them on this new concept and how it's safer, can save them more money, can speed up their project timelines. The labor benefit is huge because, sometimes you go from 3 guys to 2. Depending on the job. The other challenge is throughout all of our lines, we have digital displays instead of paper load charts. So typically in a telehandler, you're going to have your paper load charts. So the operator is going to have to look and say, well, how much can I lift here? And we call it the pucker factor. It's when the back end of the machine comes off the ground and your butt puckers up and you're like, yep, I just met the limit there.
Yep.
So, in our machines, the technology doesn't allow you to do that. It'll shut you off. So you'll hear a loud beep and it will stop the machines. It's a safety factor that's built into it. So that aspect of not just the safety, but the LMI, the load moment indicator, and the load technology, limiting technology, it's still a new concept.
Mm-hmm.
Cranes have had them, but now it's in these telehandlers. And once you get used to it, it's a no-brainer. It's just like using your phone. But there is a learning curve to it. And, some guys want to get a machine, turn it on, and just go. I mean, who doesn't? But so that's a challenge.
It feels like that technology would be table stakes at a certain class of machine. How about the Grove crane lifting a bridge piece or something? You can't afford to knock that thing over because there's nothing around to pick it back up other than another one, right?
It's something that's coming down the road. We just happen to be the first ones to put it in all of our equipment, and maybe we're early to the party, like Apple was with their Palm Pilot before Palm Pilot came out with one, and that failed. And but this is coming. So whether you like it or not, within the next couple of years, you're going to see this, what we feel is probably going to be in a lot of equipment. So
Yeah, it sounds like a great differentiating technology,
it
and
is.
I respect the heck out of you guys adding it in now. What a great way to introduce it if you're going to introduce it. You've got this 100-year-old technology that's already known across the industry. Awesome for that. And then you've got this new technology that's kind of leading edge, and people are going to have to take notice of that. And at some point, I bet we will see it proliferate into the SKUs. That'll be a good day. It seems like
Yeah.
great stuff. So, given the challenges, the pros and cons of said channel choice, rental giving you more exposure to introduce concepts like these, this differentiating tech and so forth. And also, I'm guessing like inventory, readily available inventory in the field, it's all meant to be rented. So, are there challenges there in terms of where inventory sits, who's carrying what, or what are the bottlenecks at?
So with inventory sitting, that's a dealer per dealer kind of issue, right? And around the country, it depends where you're located and what's happening. Texas is pretty hot. Florida's been hot for a while. California is one of the third largest economy in the world. They're always doing something.
Yeah, there.
The Northeast from Boston to Maryland to DC, right? There's a lot of money flowing within that region. There's always infrastructure work. There's something happening. So with inventory, it's kind of sometimes it depends on what part of the country you're on, what projects are happening, things of that nature. And you could have one dealer booming in one section and dealer having an issue trying to rent stuff, depending on project starts and construction going on and all that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, let's talk about it maybe at a higher level rather than regionally. Let's talk about the health of the space right now in
Sure.
general. How is the overall health of the world looking like to you guys?
There's some headwinds we're facing because it is an election year and people get emotionally charged, let's just say, and conservative, especially in the construction industry. They don't know what's going to happen. And we've seen this before, how many cycles we've gone through in this industry of the ups and downs and the housing market and everything else that we've gone through. So it's to be expected, right? But usually after the election happens, things calm down and it goes back to somewhat normal. So we have that happening right now. We are seeing some headwinds with that. We're also seeing some headwinds with the high interest rates. You're paying, from our dealer's perspective, even from our perspective, but our dealer's perspective even more because they're buying the equipment to put in their fleets. They're paying a lot of money on this interest for equipment, right? And if they're not renting the equipment or selling the equipment, then they have to deal with that interest rate, piling up on them. So from a dealer standpoint, that's one thing, but from a contractor standpoint, they're also paying more now for construction materials. Supply chains, from what I can tell, is caught up in most cases, but things just cost more, So the end user, the contractor, saying, buy more material, it's going to cost more. Developers might not want to start a project because they can say, oh, we're going to wait for the Fed to lower the rates so I can build something cheaper. So maybe construction starts are pushed out. I haven't heard too many stories from around the country of contractors having slow construction starts recently, but there's homeowners too that are delaying projects. They're not having their landscapers build out their patios and upgrading certain things, and that trickles obviously to the dealer and then to us in some cases. So yeah, that's a big thing. So interest rates, the economy.
Oh, that makes sense. I went to an event recently in Jacksonville from the Outdoor Power Equipment Institute, and they had an economist come in. They were talking to a historical trend that in election years, we hear a lot of that same buzz that, oh, we're waiting to see who's going to be elected, or the clients, the customers, the industry is. And he was basically saying that more or less it hasn't made an appreciable difference since Eisenhower on the actual economy within the months leading up to and away from the election, other than that pucker moment where everybody waits to see and then they get the news and they move on like nothing anyway. So like apparently since Eisenhower, it really hasn't had an appreciable difference in the economy. I thought that was interesting. It won't stop the customers from reacting in a conservative nature, but yet at the end of the day, it's mostly going to be the same. So I was kind of curious about that. The other thing that they were talking about was that inflation, although it's set, like it's happening, like we're into it for 5 years, and our government spent the money they spent, and it's parked in places that it's gone, and inflation is happening. If we're smart, we avoid recession. So what I took away from it was that wages are also on the uptick, and wages are rising somewhat commensurate to inflation. So in our demographic, you're not selling small potato stuff here. So the people you're selling these machines to still have money. So as long as the jobs are still in play, they still have the money to pay for the rising cost of things. So, basically the guys like, don't panic. It's all okay. Like,
Yeah.
if you're selling a piece of machinery to a construction-ish person who's somewhere above the lower third, you're golden. It's going to continue to happen. So, and then the other, thought on that, with politically speaking, let's not make this about politics, but if one faction gets elected, it's likely that we have more investment in infrastructure. The other group, let's say the group in power stays in power, we have consistent amount of infrastructure investments. And so in other words, projects shouldn't go anywhere. If anything, they might even go up. So you're
Right.
in the catbird seat waiting to see, is it good news or ordinary news, right? So
No,
that's
I think, and the thing is, then they sign these bills, but when does it actually happen? When does infrastructure actually happen? Because I think we're still waiting on some of the infrastructure bills to actually take place, right? So it was like in the housing crisis of 28 or 2008 and 2009, where it was like, oh, we got shovel projects ready. The next thing are, redoing a highway. It was kind of like, at that time, it was probably the only money around that was flowing into construction, because I just remember all the infrastructure things happening
yeah.
because the housing market went down. But, we look at construction Dodge data as well, and forecasting, specifically trying to understand what building segments in our dealers' regions are going to be promising, and also looking at construction starts overall in the country. And everything is pointing up right now.
Mm-hmm.
And multifamily and single family is the driving factor, because everything flows off that. And every building segment we look at in every region, the top two is multifamily and single family housing. And then you'll have streets, stores, education, government buildings, just a mixed bag of stuff kind of below that. But in some cases manufacturing, but some of that data could be thrown off because of the big chip plants and everything else, those mega projects that are happening that could skew some of the data around manufacturing. But yeah, that's what we see.
It has me wondering about, you're watching Dodge reports, you're looking at investment trends, you're looking at infrastructure. I'm sure you're chasing everything from GSA contracts to, you name it, military or whatever. What are the dealers doing? What is the rest of the channel doing to help you stay on top of that? What are the dealers doing right now, and how are they kind of adjusting to the times?
I think it depends on what part of the country you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Because you talk to one dealer and they have a bunch of projects happening within their state, and they're humming along. There's no slowdown for them. And like I said before, then you go to a different state where construction might be slowing down a bit for whatever reason, and their fleet starts coming back and it's now sitting. And you got to be a little bit more aggressive on getting it out the door. So really, it all depends on what's happening. We hear the interest rate thing all the time, and the election coming up as a headwind, so to speak. But
Yeah, yeah,
but
we
yeah,
all
I mean
kind of feel that.
that's kind of what we do. And we ask them, because going back to our heavy lifts, we see big opportunities in different segments that some of our customers haven't tapped into yet. So they might take on a couple of these machines and say, we want to get them into this market, this industry, and they're starting to find a new customer base. So it's a good opportunity for them to have that might, ease the pain, so to speak, of, equipment coming back and sitting. They're not just a one trick pony. Now they can push it into different industries.
So if you're part of the Caterpillar network, I think you referenced the Allied products. So you're like,
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of these. So for folks that aren't familiar with this, with the big heavy equipment brands, they typically are the green brand or the orange brand or the red brand or whatever. And if they're going to do business outside of the family, the Caterpillar, the John Deere's, whatever, then they have a something they call like an Allied product group, and you'd fit into that.
Yep.
So you are the if you're going to Caterpillar, you're the non-Caterpillar brand that's allowed to be on the lot. And the reason you're allowed to be on the lot is that you theoretically don't compete with anything that they're already selling under the Caterpillar brand. Is that a fair recap?
Yeah. Yeah. We're not in the cat yellow store. We're in the cat rental store, I would
Cat
say about 99.9% of the times. And yeah, we're not a competitive product to Caterpillar. Again, looking at the Caterpillar rental stores and other dealers that have similar equipment they're renting out, it's a different way to get into a different market. So they could be or upsell a customer to a better solution. So if a mason comes in and he's doing, let's just say, a multifamily, development, and he's renting a fixed boom telehandler, the guy might say, you could use a rotator there too. It'll speed up your time, be safer, yada yada yada. There's a solution for that customer that's going to help him save some money and save some time on the project.
So even if your daily rental was higher, for example, more a sound, more stout machine, you've got this thing that can swing. You pick up a bundle of bricks or a skid of whatever
Yep.
block, and you're moving it, you're swinging it over to where it needs to be rather than repositioning the machine. Okay, it totally makes sense. I'm tracking with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And there's so many different attachments. You can have a man basket. So then maybe you don't need a scissor lift or something else there. You can use the Magni with that attachment. It has forks. It's got a jib. It's got a winch. We call it 3 machines in one because it's the telehandler. Sometimes it replaces a rough terrain crane,
Mm.
And then, the man basket kind of gives you that aerial work platform that you can use as well.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And it, like the Swiss Army knife, do they rent it with those things? Does it all come out on the same flatbed
Yep.
truck on
Yep.
delivery?
You can rent it. Yeah. Just give your local dealer a call and
Yeah.
ask
And
him for all the goodies.
would they bundle that? Here's the standard machine, here's the bundled setup.
It depends on the application.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. So are dealers, so I wanted to understand what a dealer looked like first. So if a dealer is often like a cat rental store or a standalone like aerial facility, you've got a bunch of other products there. So how challenging is the like getting a mind share from the dealer?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, I'm important, get out there and help promote me.
Yeah,
How
it's
hard is that for you?
when I was in the agency business, we had a lot of, they're not the number one brand in the dealerships. They're not the Cat, Deere, Komatsu, big brands that the dealership hangs their signage outside on, right? It's always the second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th brand that they offer that provides value for their dealership. And it's always a struggle for manufacturers to push that brand through the dealership, right? And get all the sales reps involved and train them up and then push it out in the field. Because those sales reps, I mean, you go into some of these rental stores, they got hundreds of products that they have to promote, right? I mean, you think about it, you gotta know your stuff. And then when it comes down to it, I mean, let's be honest, if it's a big brand and that brand is pushing the dealer to move some equipment, they're going to move that stuff first and you're going to come, at the back of the line.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works. So from our standpoint, um, we're trying to do things a little bit more personalized and a little bit more. We want the Magni business to be successful for our dealers because if they're successful, we're successful, and that's kind of how it works. What we're trying to do from a sales and marketing perspective and the whole company is, one, we got to make sure they understand the product. So there's training involved. There's operator familiarization training. There's training for service techs. So we'll do train the trainer as well. On our behalf, we'll help train them up so they have a trainer in-house that understands the equipment. On the marketing side of things, we've just launched a co-op program. We're doing a number of things that we're basically taking initiative on and trying to get some more plug and play items for our dealers so they can, if they have a marketing staff or if they have a marketing person that has some help outside or what have you, they can take these assets and put them to use. So it's photography, we have some direct mailers, we have some social posts that are already crafted. It's a plug and play thing. Because that's one of the things from a dealership standpoint on the marketing end is, they're probably a team of one or few, and they're always looking for content because they're so busy running around trying to fulfill all the things and run their programs that they're not just sitting around creating content all the time, right? They're putting out fires or creating something or setting up open houses. And so on our end, how can we support you? How can we drive business to your dealership? So that's kind of the whole thing right there is, we want to make sure we're supporting them the best we can possibly support them so that they can rent the machines, educate the market, keep their customers happy. So
I'm kind of curious about trends like that. So I'm going to continue. We'll call this the channel trends. For a long time, it was bigger, better, larger, more beautiful buildings with more fresh, clean assets, and then more
sure.
buildings around the territory. And that was kind of the goal. Maybe are you suggesting that there's more effort on the part of the dealer or the rental store towards outreach or training, or are they showing your products in different use cases to inspire people to try different things, or where are they putting their efforts and energies these days?
So with us specifically, I can tell you that some of the higher performing Magni dealers usually have a Magni dedicated rep internally,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody that knows the equipment, hands down. And they're not just pushing it down their customer's throat. They're actually trying to find a solution. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But, it's a great opportunity for them to say, okay, this is a unique product. There's a great return on the investment. It can grow your customer base. And you dedicate somebody to it that understands it, because it's not like I said, it's not just get in and operate. You need a little training to it. And then you also need to understand the benefits. Why would I pay X amount for a monthly rental when I could just rent two machines or whatever have you? They can provide that. So that gives that dealership that extra personal touch as well, and huge solutions for the customers. So I think that's one of the things that we've seen to be very successful for us, is having that person, that champion kind of inside. And also you kind of layer on top of that our regional sales reps, who are constantly doing ride-alongs with the dealer sales team. They'll do sales blitzes with them. They'll pick a territory and go knock on doors, stop at sites, drum up some business, get some quotes. They're teaching them. Sometimes they'll teach them, if they're new, how to go on the site and, talk about the benefits of Magni firsthand, or they'll just ride along with somebody that's seasoned and they're just going to go hit a territory, and so
Yeah.
you have that component as kind of like a more aggressive sales approach, right? The old school, go knock on doors. But then you also have the approach of the dealers might have a demo days, or an open house. And then our sales team will support that too. So they'll be there, they'll be showing them the equipment, walking them around, in conjunction with the dealer reps as well, to ultimately, educate the end users.
Reminds me that back in the Toro days, when the early days of my Toro experience, we launched the Toro Dingo, and it was this, as you described, Swiss Army knife.
Yep.
And we would put different attachments on it, and it was a constant tow and show and a
Oh
constant.
yeah.
We were trying to get advocates out there, and we found that the dealers that did the best had the trained, dedicated people on staff. Also, you need somebody who speaks the language, who can
Yep.
translate needs into features, and who can actually demonstrate all the prolific number of different attachments. So are you guys trying to do, are you like generating any kind of a training ground, or are you like a train the trainer environment where you teach those experts at each dealership how to do that?
Yes. So we actually have classrooms in our New Jersey office and in our Texas facility.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where people can come in and get trained. So they can come in for service training. They schedule that through our training staff.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the dealer side. So the dealers will schedule that and send our team. There's train the trainer. And then we'll also go to their locations as well and train them up there. So it's a in classroom and practical,
Yeah, for sure.
training.
For sure. So the channel being an extension of you and what you're all trying to do in terms of, messaging to the end user, training the trainer, I can see can be a huge piece of that. Creating collateral can be a huge piece of that. What other tips and tricks or tools have you found that work to help take what's in your brain and get it out to the customers through the dealers?
It's a good question.
Still looking for them.
Yeah, exactly. We found that you've been in the business too, but cheeks and seats. How do you get the contractors in the seat of the equipment, get to test it out, and when they do, it's usually a good thing, right? So how do you wrap marketing and sales around that? And that's where we come into demo days. Either get the person to the dealership or bring it to their site. Work with the dealer. We have some concepts around what's worked in the past of getting that machine there, letting them rent it for a day or two, and really let them test it out in a real world application where they're seeing it on their job and actually working. It's like, oh, this is a no brainer. Now let's turn this into a rental.
Did I see they're doing something VR? Did I see that somewhere?
We haven't done anything VR yet that I know of.
Because yours is so unique that might be an interesting twist. Like imagine you're in the seat and you theoretically drive it and have that experience of, I can swing. I normally can't swing this machine like that, but now I can. That could be.
We had looked at some of these VR capabilities at ConExpo and I think a couple other shows, and we passed it along to our Italy counterparts. So I don't know if they have something in the works or not. It was something that we had discussed about a year ago, and we'll see where we left off there. But that would definitely help because a lot of people have it now, whether it's an excavator or crane or what have you, and you see it all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm expecting to see like a sleek leather like racing helmet with like, sort of Ferrari type styling on it. Yeah. It'll look like 24 Hours of Le Mans, some kind of really cool headset.
Yep.
Sure.
We were actually looking at something that was just the headset itself. You didn't have to have the whole contraption, like the seat and the, anything like that. It was almost like it was just like the helmet with the eyepiece, and you could just kind of work your hands.
Well, one of the reasons I ask is that we do research. You and I have talked about this offline, and we do a lot of research on what the customer journey looks like today, universally. Not talking about cranes or telehandlers specifically, but by and large, customer expectations since COVID and that supply chain backup that you were describing have changed significantly. People expect to do more on the websites before they go to the dealer days, the demo days, the things like this. Like if they're even curious about anything in the space, the conventional telehandler as opposed to the, like they're often trying to find this stuff on a website. So, what reason we exist and the reason we continue to research it is it proves out time after time after time. People want to engage this stuff earlier. They want to be inspired earlier. Then they'll go sit and put the cheeks in the seats, like you said. Are you seeing the same in your market?
We do. I can tell you a case study from last year. I got a lead come in from, I can't remember where it came in from, an email campaign or website form. And I called them about 5 minutes after it came in just to see what was happening. And they were from the middle of the US. And they're like, it was two guys actually from a fairly large company. And they said, yeah, we're just online on YouTube looking how to operate your equipment. We think it might be good for this one project we're on downtown in XYZ. And we wanted to make sure we knew how to operate it. We knew some, another rental house or another contractor had one, but for whatever reason, it wasn't working out for them. So, again, these guys were online watching videos on how to operate it and then filled out a form. And it just so happens they were watching videos when I called them. But yeah, we're seeing it's a mix. We're seeing that. We're also seeing from our email campaigns, just they fill out the form, want to get a quote on something. Will this work for my application? That kind of deal too. Video plays such a big role right now in everything. You can tell so many stories. Like it's just a lot easier right now to do any kind of storytelling than it was, 20 years ago. Because you can just, most of our stuff is educational content. That we have a QR code we built in our cab that shows you can download everything. You can watch how to operate it, all the little things, how to turn the battery on and off, how to, anything you want. So
look at what we're doing today.
Exactly.
This tomorrow, it's the consumption of media in a completely different.
That's it. All you need is a smartphone.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of quick questions. I know, we're almost coming up to time here, but I'm curious if there's about benchmarking and influences. So in your space, like who or what do you look to, or who do you listen to determine directionally whether you're going the right direction or whether, investments are paying off or if it's the right steps to take? Anything come to mind?
I used to consume a lot of books on marketing and podcasts and agency podcasts about running agencies and all that stuff. Nowadays, I'm trying to think if there's anything good. I was just listening to a podcast. I can't remember the guy's name. It was about email marketing, and the lady was so smart but so dry. I was falling asleep while I was driving to work. So I was like, okay, she has all this great insight. I'm like, just like I said, just the highlights. Show me the video. I'm good. Like I don't need to know the ins and outs, from that. So that's a good question. I have to get back to you on that one. But I can tell you that from a marketing person looking at a strategy on how to leverage influencers in the construction space, we did do that this year and last year. We went out and partnered with RR Builders, Kyle Stumpenhorst, who's a influencer in the framing industry. And he had used the Magni a couple of years ago. And he did a little thing on it before he got really big and loved it. And then last year we struck a deal with him and got a Magni up to his site. He was building his own shop and got to use it there. So we got to do a video testimonial, and then he did some stuff on his YouTube pages. And then just
Nice.
recently, we did another one. He's building the biggest structure he's ever built. I think it was like a 300 by, was it 94 by 300, something like that. Large kind of warehouse. So we just got that finished too. So that will be rolling out. But, he works with other brands. We have a great relationship with him. He's been great to us. He loves the Magni. And then of course it's like from a marketing standpoint, they're like, well, how do you measure that? How do you measure the ROI on an influencer using your equipment, posting it on their social media channels, posting it on their YouTube? I mean, he has like 1 million followers, I think, on YouTube, and 100,000 views on our stuff, and I can't put a finger on an ROI, but I can tell you that every trade show we've gone to for the last year, people come up and say, oh yeah, Kyle was using that thing. That's awesome. Did he buy one yet? So, from a brand exposure, I mean, this like a Super Bowl ad, that's constantly running.
No worries. I always think of Tim Allen with that Dixie chopper. Like how much exposure they must have got for those years.
Yep.
Rocket, whatever, zero turn mower kicking along. That was pretty funny. Well, I'm kind of curious then. Last question. What's next? What do you do? Where are you getting?
What's next? What's down the pipeline? What are we seeing? What are we doing? So from a manufacturer standpoint, from a dealer standpoint, or
I think both. The people like listening are going to be wondering, first of all, stories like this are awesome because one may not resonate, another one will, or if not yours, the next person. So there's nuggets here for everybody, and somebody out there is living your experience or something like it. So, none of us have the crystal ball, so to speak. So we're all kind of like, what does 25, 30 look like? What does the ramp up look like? And how do you make a difference? Like, how do you move the needle that 1 degree shift to take advantage of tomorrow?
Yeah, I think, for us specifically, we're always looking to improve every piece of our business. And we're still a small company here in the US. We have maybe 50 people. Mm-hmm. Every division is trying to say, well, how can we get better? And we all intertwine too. Marketing is talking with sales every day. It's talking with operations. It's talking with logistics. So we're all fairly close in talk. We're talking with parts and whatever. And there's always opportunities to get better. But I think the thing is that our focus is on supporting the dealers the best we can, and giving them, exceptional service, because I think that's something that's been, for us, we can put a personal touch on it, right? I think there's opportunity there for us to kind of be completely different than other manufacturers that are just, going through the motions. I don't want to say that and people get pissed off, but because we're so small and growing, we have the ability to really step it up in that arena and really give them the support that will help our product. And our product needs it because it's still new to the market and it's technologically advanced than some other things that, you can't just throw it out there and sell it. So, dealer support is probably number one.
I was just going to ask, so what would you tell a dealer that's not doing business with you today? Tell a dealer, coach a dealer on how to do business with you the right way in the future. If you're even thinking about us, here's something you should know about us that would allow you to take advantage of everything that we have to offer. Or put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I think, when our sales team is entertaining dealers, they're always talking about the opportunities of the equipment itself, right? You get your ROI back, expand your customer base, you can do all this great stuff, right? Yeah. It's a unique piece of equipment. It's not a commodity. It's a differentiator. It has all these bells and whistles. But at the end of the day, we always kind of underlie that with, you have a dedicated salesperson that's going to be on your side. You have a marketing team behind you. If you ever need anything, we're just a phone call away or an email away to get what you need quickly. Your parts and stuff. There's a hotline we have for parts. You can pretty much reach anybody in our company if you really wanted to.
Accessibility is the key. So don't squander it.
Yeah.
Reach to us. Take advantage. Yeah. We're here for you. That makes sense. Well, Matt, you've been very generous with your time, and I appreciate all your time and your insights. And I hope that our listeners got a great a number of nuggets out of this, and that they'll be able to, to create some actionable items. So I really appreciate you and you taking the time to join us on the Channel Chatter podcast.
You're welcome. It was great to be here.
Thank you, sir.